family, and the ties that bind us, yet sometimes tear us apart. What happens when years of silence, grudges, and pain stand in the way of love? In this heartfelt journey, we explore three powerful stories. Two brothers, separated by anger and loss, rediscover the strength of their bond on the land that shaped their childhood. A mother and daughter, broken by misunderstandings, find their way back to each other through shared memories and the healing power of love. And two sisters, divided by resentment, learn that forgiveness is the bridge to a love they thought was lost. These are tales of reconciliation, resilience, and the courage to let go of the past. Because sometimes the hardest step is the first one back to each other. The sun hung low over the sprawling farmlands of Willow Creek, casting golden hues across fields that seemed endless. To most, the land was a symbol of beauty and peace, but for Daniel and Marcus Reed, it was a battlefield, a reminder of the rift that had torn them apart. Once inseparable, the brothers had spent their childhood chasing fireflies and building forts along the creek that ran through their family's farm. But the bond they shared shattered years ago, buried under layers of anger, betrayal, and silence. Daniel hadn't been back to the farm in over a decade. When he left at 22, it was with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart full of bitterness. Marcus had stayed behind, taking over the farm after their father's sudden death. One evening, as Daniel sat in his city apartment, an envelope arrived. The handwriting on it was familiar. Marcus's. Daniel hesitated, his fingers trembling as he opened it. "Dan, the farm's in trouble. I've done all I can, but it's not enough. If you care about what Dad built, come back. If you don't, I won't bother you again. Marcus." The words were simple but heavy. Daniel read them over and over, his mind replaying the day he left. The argument, the accusations, the way Marcus had let him walk away without a fight. He wanted to ignore the letter, to leave the past buried, but something deeper, a whisper of loyalty, of unfinished business, pulled him back. When Daniel arrived at the farm, he was struck by how much had changed. The barn's red paint was peeling, and the fences sagged under the weight of time. The land, once vibrant, looked weary. Marcus was in the field, his broad shoulders hunched as he repaired a broken fence. Daniel approached cautiously, his heart pounding. Marcus looked up, his expression unreadable. For a moment they stood in silence, the years of distance stretching between them like a chasm. "You got my letter?" Marcus finally said, his voice gruff. Daniel nodded. "I'm here, aren't I?" Marcus smirked faintly. "Didn't think you'd show." "I didn't come for you," Daniel shot back, more defensively than he intended. "I came for Dad's farm." Marcus's eyes hardened. "Well then, let's get to work." The days that followed were filled with hard labor and strained silence. The brothers worked side by side, repairing equipment, tending to the crops, and fixing the farmhouse roof. But the tension between them was palpable, like a storm waiting to break. One evening, as they sat on the porch overlooking the creek, Daniel couldn't hold back anymore. "Why did you send me away?" he asked, his voice shaking. Marcus frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You didn't even fight for me to stay," Daniel said, the pain of that day bubbling to the surface. "I wanted to help after Dad died, but you made it clear there was no place for me here." Marcus's face darkened. "You think I wanted you to leave? You think it didn't kill me to watch you walk away?" "Then why?" "Because you had dreams, Dan," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising. "You wanted to see the world, to make something of yourself. And I knew if you stayed, you'd resent me, resent this farm." Daniel stared at him, stunned. "You didn't give me a choice." Marcus exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping. "Maybe I was wrong, but I stayed because someone had to. I sacrificed my dreams so you wouldn't have to." The weight of Marcus's words settled over them. For the first time, Daniel saw the burden his brother had carried alone. The long hours, the financial struggles, the loneliness. The next morning, an argument erupted while they were repairing the barn roof. "You think you're the only one who lost something?" Daniel shouted. "I lost my family, my home, all because you thought you knew what was best for me. And I lost my brother," Marcus yelled back, his voice cracking. "Every day, I regretted letting you go, but I didn't know how to fix it. And then you stopped calling, stopped caring. I stopped calling because you never answered." The words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Marcus climbed down from the roof, his hands clenched into fists. "I can't change the past, Dan, but I can't keep doing this alone. If you don't want to be here, just go." Daniel watched him walk away, his heart aching. He realized then that their anger wasn't just about the past. It was about the years they had lost, the chances they had missed to mend their bond. That evening, Daniel went down to the creek, their childhood sanctuary. He sat by the water, skipping stones like they used to. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Marcus stood there, hesitant but hopeful. "Dad used to say the creek was like us," Marcus said, sitting down beside him. "Two sides of the same stream, always connected, even when we're apart." Daniel smiled faintly. "He also said we fought like two tomcats in a sack." Marcus chuckled. He wasn't wrong. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the water soothing their frayed nerves. "I'm sorry," Marcus said finally, "for everything. For not fighting harder to keep you here, for not being there when you needed me." Daniel looked at his brother, the sincerity in his eyes undeniable. "I'm sorry too, for walking away, for letting my pride keep me from coming back." Marcus nodded. "So, what now?" Daniel picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water. "We rebuild, together." The weeks that followed were a turning point. The brothers worked side by side, not just on the farm, but on their relationship. They shared stories from the years they had missed, laughed over childhood memories, and even argued. But this time, they listened. The farm began to thrive again, and so did their bond. They planted new crops, repaired the farmhouse, and built a bridge over the creek, both a practical addition and a symbolic gesture. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Marcus raised a bottle of beer. "To Dad," he said. Daniel clinked his bottle against Marcus's. "To us." For the first time in years, the brothers felt whole. They knew the scars of the past would never fully fade, but they also knew that forgiveness and love were stronger than any grudge. The creek still flowed between them, but now it was a bridge, not a divide. The small town of Clearwater was quiet as the autumn leaves fell gently onto cobblestone streets. In a modest house at the end of Magnolia Lane, Claire sat by the window, watching the wind scatter the golden leaves. The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by the faint creak of her rocking chair. It had been 7 years since she last saw her daughter Anna, and the ache of that absence lingered in her chest like a wound that refused to heal. Anna had always been headstrong, her fiery personality clashing with Claire's more traditional ways. Their last argument had been the worst, a storm of accusations, hurtful words, and slammed doors. Anna had left that night, swearing she'd never return. Claire had written dozens of letters over the years, but none of them had been sent. They sat in a box beneath her bed, their words filled with regret and apologies she wasn't brave enough to voice. But this time, it was different. This time, the letter wasn't from her. The envelope was simple, with Anna's name scrawled in a handwriting Claire recognized immediately. It was from her late husband, Paul. Claire had found it tucked away in an old box of his belongings just last week. She hesitated before dropping the letter into the mailbox, her hands trembling. It was a desperate act, a final attempt to bridge the chasm between them. Anna stood at the edge of the familiar driveway, her heart pounding as memories flooded her. The house hadn't changed much except for the garden, now overgrown with weeds. The letter had caught her off guard. Seeing her father's handwriting again after so many years had brought tears to her eyes. His words were simple yet profound. "Anna, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye. I want you to know that no matter what, your mother loves you more than words can say. Don't let pride steal what time you have left. Love, Dad." Anna clutched the letter tightly as she walked to the front door. Her hand hovered over the doorbell, her stomach knotting with nerves. Finally, she pressed it. The door opened slowly, and there stood Claire, her face lined with years of sorrow and longing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Anna," Claire whispered, her voice cracking. "Hi, Mom," Anna said, her own voice trembling. The initial reunion was awkward, filled with polite smiles and strained conversations. Claire made tea and they sat at the kitchen table. the same table where so many of their arguments had taken place. Anna glanced around the room, noting the little changes, the new curtains, the empty chair where her father used to sit. "I didn't think you'd ever come back," Claire admitted, breaking the silence. "I wasn't sure I would," Anna replied. "But Dad's letter, it felt like a sign." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I found it last week. I didn't even know he'd written it." They lapsed into silence again, the weight of their shared grief and unresolved conflict pressing down on them. Finally, Anna spoke. "Why didn't you try to find me? 7 years, Mom. 7 years, and you never came after me." Claire flinched at the accusation, the guilt she had carried for so long rising to the surface. "I wanted to," she said softly, "but I thought you hated me." Anna's expression softened, though the hurt lingered in her eyes. "I didn't hate you. I was angry. Angry that you didn't support me when I needed you most." Claire looked down at her hands, her voice barely audible. "I was scared, Anna. When you dropped out of college to chase your dreams, I thought you were throwing everything away. I didn't know how to support something I didn't understand." The honesty opened a floodgate of emotions. They talked late into the night, revisiting the past with raw vulnerability. Anna told her mother about the struggles she had faced, living paycheck to paycheck, dealing with rejection after rejection as she pursued her dream of becoming an artist. She spoke of the nights she cried herself to sleep, wishing she had her mother's support. Claire listened, her heart breaking with every word. She admitted to her own struggles, the loneliness, the regret, the countless nights she sat by the window, hoping Anna would come home. "I thought I was protecting you," Claire said, tears streaming down her face. "But all I did was push you away." Anna reached across the table, placing her hand over her mother's. "I just wanted you to believe in me." The next day, Claire led Anna to the attic, where she had stored boxes of Anna's childhood drawings and paintings. Dust covered the boxes, but the contents inside were untouched. "I never threw them away," Claire said, her voice tinged with emotion. "I kept them all, even when I didn't understand why you wanted this so badly. They reminded me of the joy you used to have." Anna sifted through the drawings, her eyes misting over. "I thought you didn't care." "I cared more than you'll ever know," Claire replied. "I just didn't know how to show it." As they sorted through the drawings, they laughed over childhood memories and shared stories they had never told each other. The attic, once a place of forgotten things, became a space of connection and healing. Over the following weeks, Anna stayed at the house, helping Claire tend to the neglected garden and repaint the walls. They worked side by side, rebuilding not just the home, but their relationship. One afternoon, Anna set up an easel by the creek that ran behind the house. She began painting a scene from her childhood: the house, the garden, and a younger version of herself playing with her mother. Claire watched from the porch, her heart swelling with pride and love. For the first time, she saw Anna's talent not as a rebellion, but as a gift. "That's beautiful," Claire said, walking over to stand beside her. "Thanks, Mom," Anna replied, smiling. "I think Dad would have loved it." Claire nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "He would have been so proud of you, just like I am." Anna turned to her mother, tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you too, for being brave enough to let me back in." They embraced, the years of distance and pain dissolving into the warmth of forgiveness. Months later, Anna held her first art exhibition in Clearwater. Claire was there, standing front and center, beaming with pride as she introduced herself to everyone as Anna's mother. The centerpiece of the exhibition was the painting Anna had created by the creek. Titled Home, it was a testament to their journey, a reminder that love, though tested by time and conflict, could endure and heal. As they stood together, hand in hand, they knew that while the past couldn't be changed, the future was theirs to write. The early autumn sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the small town of Millbrook. The scent of crisp leaves and a faint chill in the air hinted at the approaching winter. At the heart of this quiet town stood a weathered house with peeling white paint and a sagging porch swing. Home once to Emily and Sarah Moore, sisters who had shared everything from whispered childhood secrets to fiery teenage arguments. But for 10 years now, silence stood between them, a wall built from misunderstandings, pride, and pain. Emily sat at her cluttered kitchen table, scrolling through her phone when an unfamiliar number lit up her screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hello," a hesitant voice responded, one Emily hadn't heard in a decade. "Emily, it's me, Sarah." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Memories, both sweet and sour, crashed over her like a tidal wave. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. Sarah sighed. "Mom's gone. The funeral's in 3 days." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Their mother, the woman who had tirelessly tried to mend the rift between them, was gone. "I thought you'd want to know," Sarah added softly. "I'll be there," Emily said before hanging up. Her hands trembled as she stared at the phone. The loss of their mother stung, but the thought of seeing Sarah again ignited a storm of anger and fear in her chest. The funeral was held in the small church their family had attended every Sunday growing up. Emily arrived early, her heart heavy as she entered the familiar space. She saw Sarah at the front, her shoulders hunched, her black dress clinging to her like a shroud. For a moment, Emily hesitated. The years of bitterness between them threatened to hold her back, but the sight of Sarah's grief-stricken face pulled her forward. "Sarah," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. Sarah turned, and their eyes met for the first time in a decade. Emily was struck by how much older her sister looked. Lines etched around her eyes, her once vibrant smile replaced by a weary sadness. "I didn't think you'd come," Sarah admitted. Emily shrugged. "She was my mom too." Sarah winced but nodded. "Thank you." They stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. After the funeral, Emily returned to their childhood home. The creak of the wooden floorboards and the faint smell of lavender, her mother's favorite scent, brought a flood of memories. She wandered into the living room, where a faded photo album sat on the coffee table. Flipping through the pages, she saw snapshots of their childhood. Sarah holding her hand on her first day of school, the two of them laughing in matching Halloween costumes, their mother beaming behind them. "Do you remember that day?" Sarah's voice broke through her reverie. Emily turned to see her sister standing in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. She gestured to a photo of them as kids, their faces smeared with chocolate cake. "Mom was furious," Sarah continued, a small smile tugging at her lips. "We ruined her new tablecloth." Emily chuckled despite herself. "We blamed it on the dog." For a moment, the tension between them eased, but then Sarah's expression grew serious. "I never meant for us to end up like this," she said softly. Emily felt her defenses rising. "You mean after you betrayed me?" Sarah flinched. "I didn't betray you, Emily. I made a mistake, a stupid, impulsive mistake. But I never meant to hurt you." Emily scoffed. "You slept with my fiancé, Sarah. That's not just a mistake." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "I know I was wrong, and I've spent the last 10 years regretting it. But I lost you, Emily, and losing you was worse than losing him." Emily wanted to stay angry, to cling to the pain that had fueled her all these years. But seeing the raw regret in Sarah's eyes chipped away at her resolve. Over the next few days, the sisters spent more time together, sorting through their mother's belongings. Each item they packed carried a memory, a piece of their shared history. One evening, Emily found an old letter in her mother's handwriting. "To my girl," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to remind you of what truly matters. Life is too short for grudges. Love each other, forgive each other, and remember that family is a gift. Don't let the past steal your future." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she read the letter aloud to Sarah. When she finished, they sat in silence, the weight of their mother's words sinking in. "I'm sorry," Sarah said again, her voice trembling. "I'll say it 1,000 times if that's what it takes. But I need you to know, I miss my sister. I miss us." Emily looked at her sister, the vulnerability in her eyes mirroring her own. She thought about their mother's words, about the love they had shared as children, and the years they had lost to anger. "I miss us too," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Forgiveness didn't come all at once, but it came. Slowly they began to rebuild their relationship, brick by brick. They laughed over old memories, cried over the pain they had caused each other, and found solace in shared grief for their mother. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch swing, Sarah reached over and took Emily's hand. "Thank you for giving me another chance," she said. Emily squeezed her hand. Thank you for not giving up on me." As the autumn leaves fell around them, the sisters felt something they hadn't in years: hope. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to walk it together. Because in the end, the bond of family, though frayed and weathered, was never truly broken. Months later, the sisters returned to the small church, this time for a happier occasion. Emily, dressed in a simple white dress, smiled as Sarah adjusted her veil. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," Emily replied. "And thank you for standing by me today." Sarah nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "Always." As Emily walked down the aisle, she glanced back at Sarah and smiled. Their mother's words echoed in her mind: "Love each other, forgive each other." And in that moment, Emily knew they had finally found their way back to each other. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, forgiveness, and family. If these stories touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of someone special, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more motivational stories and speeches that uplift and inspire. And hey, hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Together, let's continue to grow, forgive, and embrace the power of connection. See you in the next one.